All right, so today we are going diving deep into business risk management.
Ooh, fun.
You bet. You've given us two resources to work with, right? A
Yeah.
presentation and a workbook, both titled BSB OPS 504 V1.1. I think they sound a little dry, but we're going to spice things up, don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of what keeps business leaders up at night, right? Those
The
worries
worries, yeah.
and how to actually sleep soundly, knowing you have a handle on everything.
Knowing that you've got a plan, right?
Yeah.
So instead of just like defining risk with a boring definition, let's imagine you're opening a new restaurant, okay?
Okay.
The excitement is definitely there, but so are the unknowns, right? Like, what if your amazing chef just walks out?
Or
Or a new competitor opens up right across the street?
Mhm.
Or even, like, what if a global pandemic forces you to close your doors for months?
Oh man, that
Yeah,
actually happened
it did.
to a lot of
A
businesses.
lot of business.
Yeah, that's precisely what risk is. It's the effect of all those what ifs on your goals,
Right.
right? The
How-
what
how-
ifs. Risk management isn't about getting rid of uncertainty completely. It's about being smart,
Yeah.
making smart choices, even though it's there.
Yeah, it's like wearing a seatbelt.
Yes,
You're not preventing the accident,
you got
but
it.
you're minimizing the damage.
Exactly.
Right. That's the idea. Okay, so that's where those BSBO PS504 resources come in.
They do.
They actually point to an international standard, this AS/NZS ISO 31000:2009, and it's like a framework
Okay.
to figure out, analyze, and address risks in a really organized way.
Right. So those resources kind of break risks down into these neat categories:
Mhm.
financial, operational, technological, and, all the others. But we're going to approach this just a little bit differently.
Okay.
We're going to use this case study from the workbook, Packaging and Plastics,
Okay.
to show how the whole risk management process actually plays out in the real world.
I love a good case study. Tell me more about this packaging and plastics. What kind of business are they?
So they're a manufacturing company, and they're going through this like big overhaul of all their safety procedures.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Manufacturing has a lot of heavy machinery and potential hazards.
Exactly.
So a really solid risk management plan is super important there.
Super important.
So how did they even tackle that first step, the identifying the risks part? Did they just like sit around and brainstorm all the things that could go wrong?
Well, brainstorming is definitely a part of it.
Okay.
But it's much more structured than just throwing ideas around.
Okay.
In this case, they actually brought in specialists, safety engineers, people who knew about the equipment, even occupational therapists.
An occupational therapist.
An occupational therapist.
That's so interesting.
To look for things they may have overlooked.
I never would have thought of that. But it makes sense, you know? They look at ergonomics and preventing injuries.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly. You want to get a bunch of different perspectives
Right.
to make sure you're covering everything.
Yeah.
And it's not just brainstorming. They use tools like flowcharts,
Oh, interesting.
to map out their whole manufacturing process and pinpoint those vulnerabilities, like where a bottleneck might be or where human error, could lead to an accident. Those kinds of things.
So, okay, so they've identified all the risks, this big list of what ifs.
The big list.
Do they just start like frantically trying to fix everything all at once?
Not quite. Not quite. The next step is like actually looking at those risks, figuring out how likely they are to happen
Okay.
and how bad the impact would be if they did happen.
Yeah.
They use this thing called a likelihood and consequence scale to assess each risk. So, for example, let's say they found a risk of a conveyor belt malfunctioning.
Okay, so a malfunction, I mean, it's probably, it could happen, right?
Yeah.
But what about the consequences?
Yeah, that depends on the specifics.
Yeah.
Right, it does. It could be a minor thing, just like a little slowdown in production, which is really, not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But, a big malfunction could cause like serious injuries or even stop the whole production line, which would be a disaster.
Yeah.
Right.
So by looking at each risk that way, packaging and plastics could start to like prioritize
Exactly.
which ones needed the most attention.
You got it.
It's about focusing your energy on the biggest threats first.
Exactly. That's right. And that brings us to the next step, evaluating and treating the risks.
Okay.
This is where you decide what you're going to do about those risks that you've prioritized.
Yep.
You've got four main options: avoid it, mitigate it, share it, or retain it.
4 options. Okay, so using that conveyor belt example, avoiding the risk would be like getting rid of the conveyor belt completely.
Right, exactly.
Which, I mean, it's probably not practical,
Probably not a manufacturing setting.
not a manufacturing setting. Okay, so what about mitigating the risk?
So that might be, implementing some regular checks on it. Maintaining it, making sure the employees know how to use it properly.
Yeah.
You know,
Training,
training, exactly.
having backups in place.
Backups, exactly.
Yeah.
Just in case it does malfunction.
That sounds much more realistic.
Right.
So how does packaging and plastics decide which one to do? Like avoid, mitigate, share, or retain? Do they just I don't know, pull out a magic 8-ball?
I wish it was that simple. It really comes down to weighing, how much it costs and the benefits of each option.
Yeah.
For example, sharing the risk could mean getting insurance
Oh, yeah.
to cover any losses from a big malfunction.
Right. So if mitigating is super expensive,
Exactly.
it might make more sense to just pay an insurance company,
Exactly.
right, to take care of it.
And sometimes if it's a small impact risk, it might be easier to just, retain the risk and deal with it if it happens.
If it happens.
Yeah, it's about making strategic decisions based on what's going on.
Yeah. This is starting to sound like a giant puzzle.
It is kind of.
You got all these pieces, all these risks, and you're trying to fit them together in a way that, makes a strong picture for your business.
That's a really good way to put it.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've covered identifying, analyzing, and evaluating the risks. What's the last piece of this whole risk management puzzle?
That would be monitoring and review.
Monitoring and review.
Which is super important, but a lot of people forget about it.
Okay.
It's like having a smoke detector.
Okay.
You put it up there for peace of mind, but you also have to test it,
Yeah.
Change the batteries to make sure it actually works when you need it.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Thanks.
Okay, so welcome back to our deep dive into managing all that business risk. Last time we were talking about packaging and plastics.
Yes. Our case study.
To see how they tackled the first 3 steps of this whole process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Identifying, analyzing, and evaluating.
Right. All those steps here.
Yeah. And we left off talking about monitoring and review, which is making sure your plan isn't just sitting there gathering dust.
Exactly. You got to keep it alive.
Yeah, it's got to be a living document.
Right. It's like having a smoke detector. Right. You install it and then, you hope for the best, but
You hope for the best.
you got to test it.
Yeah.
Make sure it works when you need it.
That's such a good analogy.
Thanks.
So how does packaging and plastics go about monitoring their plan? Do they have a whole department just for risk management?
Not necessarily. It can be as simple as just checking in on things regularly as part of what they already do.
Okay.
For example, maybe they bring up risk stuff in their monthly management meetings.
So instead of just, looking at sales figures, they're also asking hey, are any new risks popping up?
Exactly. Is what we're doing to mitigate still working?
Right.
Do we need to change anything?
Yeah. Keep it fresh.
Keep it fresh. Exactly. It's about keeping a risk on everyone's minds.
Right.
Making it part of everyday business.
I like that.
Yeah.
So what if they find a new risk, or something they're doing isn't really working?
Okay, yeah.
Do they have to go back to square one and start the whole process over?
Well, not always. It's more about, adjusting what they already have. Tweaking it. Risk management is ongoing. Remember, it's not just a one-time thing, It's a continuous loop of planning, implementing, monitoring, and reviewing.
Yeah, I get it. So it's like a feedback loop, always getting info, checking your progress, and making little changes as you go.
Yes, exactly. And speaking of feedback, a really important part of monitoring and review is communication, making sure everyone's in the loop.
Oh, yeah, for sure. A plan's only good if everyone's on board and knows what they got to do, right? But sometimes getting people excited about risk management, it can feel like an uphill battle.
You're telling me. People don't always love change, especially when it means new procedures and stuff,
Right.
That's why how you communicate it is so important. You have to explain why you're doing it, how it helps the company, the employees, everyone.
Yeah, so it's not just here's the plan, follow it. It's more hey, this helps us prevent accidents, protects the company, and make sure we can all keep doing what we do.
Exactly. And it's not just the higher-ups talking down to people, You need to create a space where people feel comfortable speaking up.
Sharing their thoughts.
Exactly. Sharing ideas, concerns, observations.
Yeah, I mean, the people actually doing the work, they're the ones who often spot the problems first, right?
Absolutely. Remember, packaging and plastics, they get everyone involved in the process from the factory floor to the top.
Oh, that's cool. So they might have suggestion boxes, regular safety meetings, maybe even an online thing where people can anonymously, report issues or near misses.
Exactly. It's about having different ways to get that feedback.
Yeah.
And making sure everyone feels heard.
I like that.
Yeah. So
Nice.
by having all this open communication and making it everyone's responsibility, packaging and plastics basically turns its whole workforce into risk management pros.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. Because when everyone's on board,
Yes.
the whole company's stronger, right? More able to deal with whatever comes up.
Exactly. That's the whole point, being resilient and adaptable.
Okay, this is making me think about risk management differently.
Oh, yeah. How so?
It's not just about avoiding all the bad stuff. It's about making the company, like, smarter, more proactive.
You got it. It's about turning challenges into opportunities.
Turning challenges into opportunities.
Exactly. Which brings us to another really important part of this monitoring and review stuff, contingency planning. Because let's face it, no matter how good your plan is, unexpected stuff happens.
Right. It's like that example in the workbook about the warehouse fire. Even with a plan, things can go wrong and you got to be ready.
Exactly. Contingency planning is about asking those what-if questions.
Okay, like, what if our main plan doesn't work? What do we do then? How do we talk to everyone? What resources do we need?
Exactly. It's like having a backup plan, a plan B, maybe even C and D,
Just in case.
just in case.
Okay, so let's say packaging and plastics is worried about a big power outage. What would their backup plan look like?
Well, they might get backup generators,
Yeah.
right? So they can keep the important stuff running.
Yeah.
They might have a plan to evacuate everyone safely, ways to communicate with everyone.
And maybe they've got, like, other suppliers they can use if their main one is also affected by the outage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about thinking through all the possibilities and having a way to minimize the disruption, to keep the business going.
You know, this is making me feel a lot less anxious about all those what ifs out there.
I'm glad.
It's like empowering to know there are actual ways to handle these risks
That's the goal.
and to, face uncertainty without freaking out.
Exactly. That's what risk management is all about. Giving people and companies the tools to make smart decisions, to be ready for those challenges.
Yeah, so it's not about pretending there's no risk. It's about understanding it and
Uh-huh.
using it to your advantage.
You said it perfectly. And that's a good place to wrap up this part. Next time, we'll talk about some of the challenges you might face when you're putting a risk management plan into action.
Okay, so stay tuned, everyone, for the final part of our deep dive where we'll give you even more tools to confidently tackle those uncertainties in the business world. Welcome back, deep divers. We're on the final stretch of our exploration into managing business risk.
That's right. We've talked about a lot, like identifying those risks.
Yeah, the what ifs.
The what ifs, and even like coming up with backup plans when things go wrong.
Right, because let's face it, things don't always go according to plan.
Exactly. That's life, right? And business too.
Definitely. But we've also been talking about how risk management, it's not just about avoiding problems.
It's bigger than that.
Yeah, it's about making your business, like, stronger, more flexible,
More resilient. That's the word.
resilient, yeah.
Yeah.
But let's be real, putting all this into practice,
It can be a little overwhelming, right?
it can be a little daunting, I guess.
Totally. And the BSBOPS 504 resources, they actually talk about that.
Okay.
Implementing a risk management plan, it's not always easy. There will be bumps along the way,
Oh, yeah,
but
definitely.
knowing what those bumps might be, that can really help.
So what's like the biggest hurdle companies face? Is it like a lack of resources? Because hiring a whole team just for risk management, that sounds pricey.
Resources are definitely something to think about,
Yeah.
especially for smaller businesses.
Right, right.
But honestly, the most common problem is people just resisting change.
Resisting change.
Yeah. People get comfortable doing things a certain way,
Yeah.
even if it's not the best way anymore.
It's like that saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But sometimes things need a little fixing?
Exactly. Sometimes you got to shake things up a bit.
And that's where good leadership comes in, right?
100%.
It's about getting people to buy in.
Yeah, you got to explain why we're doing this, how it helps everyone.
Not just, here's the plan, do it.
No. It's about showing the benefits.
Preventing accidents, protecting the company, everyone's jobs.
Exactly.
You're basically painting a picture of a better future because of risk management.
A brighter future, yeah. And you know what else really helps? Involving people right from the start.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Ask for their input, listen to their worries, make them feel like they're part of the team.
Not just following orders.
Exactly. It makes a huge difference.
Right, like with packaging and plastics.
Oh, yeah, they're a great example.
They got everyone involved, from the top to the bottom.
Everyone had a voice.
Exactly.
It was a team effort.
Okay, so let's say you've managed to get everyone on board. You've got this great plan.
Awesome.
But then how do you keep the momentum going? It's easy to be excited at the beginning.
Yeah, the initial energy,
Yeah, but then life happens, right? Other priorities come up.
it's like starting a new workout routine.
Okay, yeah.
All gung-ho at first, but then,
Life gets in the way.
life gets in the way, exactly.
Yeah.
And the BSBO PS 504 resources, they actually have some tips for this.
Okay, I like tips.
Yeah, so tip number 1, make risk management part of your everyday culture.
Not just a one-time project.
Exactly. Talk about it in meetings and performance reviews, even put in job descriptions.
So it's just like how you do things.
Exactly. It's built in.
I like that.
Tip number 2, set clear goals and ways to track your progress.
Okay.
Celebrate those wins.
Make it visible.
Make it visible, exactly, so everyone can see the value.
Yeah, it's like those fitness trackers that tell you how many steps you've taken.
Oh, yeah, those are motivating.
You can see your progress. It keeps it going.
Absolutely. And last but not least, don't be afraid to tweak your plan along the way.
Okay.
Because things change, right?
Mm.
The business world is constantly evolving. So your approach to risk has got to evolve too.
So it's that loop again.
It all comes back to the loop.
Planning, implementing, monitoring, reviewing, adapting.
You got it. Now, before we wrap things up completely, there's one last challenge I want to mention.
Okay, what's that?
It's that tendency to just focus on preventing the bad stuff.
But isn't that the whole point of risk management?
It's a big part of it, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's not the whole picture.
Okay.
Remember, risk and opportunity, they go hand in hand.
Oh, interesting.
If you're so scared of taking any risk, you might miss out on some amazing chances to grow,
To innovate.
to innovate, yeah, to really reach your goals.
So it's all about finding that sweet spot,
The
right?
balancing act.
Being aware of the risks, but not letting fear hold you back.
Exactly. There's actually a case study in the BSBO PS 504 materials about a company that was so afraid of risk, they missed out on a huge opportunity.
Oh, no.
Yeah, their competitor, they went for it, and that company got left behind.
That's got to be tough to
A
swallow.
hard lesson to learn.
So how do you find that balance between being cautious and being, brave enough to take those chances?
Well, it starts with knowing your company's risk appetite.
Risk appetite.
Now, how much risk are you comfortable with? What are your hard limits?
It's kind of like investing.
Exactly.
You have to know how much risk you're willing to take.
Exactly. Are you going for the high risk, high reward plays, or are you playing it safe?
Right.
And having those conversations, figuring out your risk appetite
Yeah,
and making sure it lines up with your business strategy.
that's key.
It's key. It helps you make good decisions when things are uncertain.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we?
You've been on quite a journey.
We have. So, as we wrap up this whole deep dive, what's like the one thing you really want our listener to take away from all of this?
I think the biggest takeaway is that risk management isn't about pretending uncertainty doesn't exist.
Okay.
It's about facing it head on,
Yeah.
understanding it, and using it to make your business better.
To make it stronger.
Stronger, exactly. It's about being ready for challenges and turning those potential problems into chances to grow.
Wow, that's great. Risk as a chance to grow.
That's the mindset shift we need.
So, listeners, as you're out there navigating the business world, remember that risk is part of the game.
It's part of the fun.
It is. But with the right knowledge and the right tools,
And the right attitude.
yeah, you can turn risk into something that helps you achieve your goals.
It's all about perspective.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.